How's it going, guys? I finally got to see Godzilla Minus One over the past weekend, and I wanted to talk about it because this movie really surprised me. Now, this isn't the American Godzilla. It's not related to Legendary's Monsterverse, which I've been covering in my reviews of Monarch Legacy of the Monsters. This is Toho Studios from Japan, and it's basically a remake of the original Godzilla, but with different characters. It takes place right after World War II, with Japan as the only country involved. It's classic Godzilla for 2023. This is a remake, quote unquote, updated for modern audiences, done right, because the only thing they updated was the special effects. The cultural attitudes of these characters from the Second World War are not altered to fit modern day cultural attitudes, which is what you often see in modern Hollywood remakes. Before we dive into the plot of Godzilla, I wanted to take a quick look at the most successful films for the typical American studio contenders for 2023. But before we jump into the big league box office numbers, let's just mention that Disney's Wish and The Marvels, the two films that Bob Iger was banking on for a return to form for Disney, aren't even in the same league as the top dogs this year, so we're not going to bother comparing them. Disney's big hitter this year was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which made a hefty profit of about $595 million, a solid performance for a $250 million budget. But Universal wasn't playing around. They dropped the Super Mario Bros. Movie and watched a $100 million budget skyrocket into a $1.26 billion profit. They're not just playing the game, they basically set a new high score. And of course, Warner Bros. Joined the party with Barbie, turning a $151 million budget into a $1.29 billion profit. But here comes the surprise contender from Japan, Godzilla Minus One. Because with a modest budget of $15 million, it managed to rake in a profit of $42.25 million, giving it a profit margin of 281.72%, which is quite a bit higher than the profit margin for Guardians 3. Now, of course, Godzilla Minus One didn't pull in the same amount of money that the other three did, but keep in mind that it wasn't made by the big three American studios, and it was also released in half as many theaters. But in terms of the profit margin, it beat Disney's highest performing film of the year, and Guardians 3 was, in my opinion, one of the top three films from the MCU since Endgame. The MCU is probably the most successful franchise that's ever existed, and its highest performing film was beat out in the terms of profit margins by Godzilla Minus One. Now, this Godzilla isn't the king of the monsters that American audiences are used to. This is not a giant lizard superhero, nor is it a benevolent monster king. This is the classic god of destruction. He lives to destroy. If you caught his attention, he would chase you down to the ends of the earth and kill everyone in his path. Now, I loved the classic look of this Godzilla. He isn't an agile humanoid lizard, he's the stumpy sea creature that wasn't made to run on land. But I think he's got the most dangerous atomic breath that I've seen from Godzilla in years. Now, Legendary's Godzilla has a continuous stream of raw atomic energy, but this Godzilla creates a swift beam of energy that upon impact reflects the same level of destruction as an atomic bomb. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy the legendary monster films, but I can't get over how awesome it was to see a Godzilla that just wants to kill people. I think this Godzilla fulfills a need in audiences, a return to monsters that aren't humanized and villains that aren't sympathetic. It's never made much sense to me to generate a connection between the audience and a giant fire-breathing lizard. With Kong, sure, but not Godzilla. And I thought the way that the characters brought down Godzilla was pretty creative, and there were definitely real stakes to it. Remember, this film takes place in 1957, or at least that's when the final battle with Godzilla takes place. This was a private citizen army fighting with decommissioned battleships and an unfinished prototype aircraft. They didn't have advanced Titan weapons that end up having no effect against them, nor was there a second, more benevolent monster aiding them. This was humanity versus a pure force of nature. And Godzilla actually survives in the end, though humanity doesn't realize that. While I appreciate this return to the classics with Godzilla, I was incredibly surprised at how compelling the story of the protagonist was. A few weeks ago, I made a video talking about how I think the human story doesn't matter as much in giant monster movies, and I'm not changing what I said there, but I will add the caveat that I just haven't seen it done well until now. This was such a human story, simultaneously heart-wrenching and inspiring. The most enjoyable human element to me was the brotherhood and camaraderie, not just among the main character's tugboat crew, but all those men, those resentful veterans of the war, who chose, not because of, but in spite of their government, to band together and sacrifice their lives to protect the future of their country. This was a story about redemption. Redemption for the main protagonist, Shikishima, and redemption for the men of Japan whose lives were thrown away for a war that they didn't win. And despite some of the darker aspects of the film, like the collective disgust towards Shikishima as a kamikaze pilot who fled from his duty, as well as the wanton death and destruction caused by Godzilla, the message was incredibly positive. Shikishima, the former pilot who twice failed to do his duty, the pilot for whom the war hadn't ended even after Japan's surrender, was willing to sacrifice himself not only for redemption, but also to secure a future for his adopted daughter, Akiko. But while the film takes the stance that the quote unquote resolve to sacrifice yourself for your people is the right attitude to have, that ultimately you should be fighting to live. It was a surprisingly in depth and intense character arc for a single character in a 2-hour monster film. And the ending reunion with Noriko and the realization that Shikishima could finally have a family now that he not only redeemed himself, but he helped save Japan, making him a hero, was such a beautiful ending to the film. I also appreciate the lack of fake positivity and undeserved gratitude on the part of the main character. Shikishima had to work hard to redeem himself in the eyes of his neighbor Sumiko. He redeemed himself in the eyes of Tachibana, the sole survivor other than Shikishima of the first Godzilla attack. He was willing to take care of Noriko and Akiko like they were his family, without allowing himself to really accept them and enjoy all of the emotional benefits of having a wife and daughter. In terms of the acting, I thought there were pretty great performances all around, and everything was only enhanced by the music. I felt in awe watching this film, despite there not being the kind of huge armies and CGI battles that we've gotten used to with franchises like the MCU and the MonsterVerse. It's actually a fairly grounded story, with some of the bigger elements elevated by the music. The tragedy, the action, and the destruction caused by Godzilla all felt very intimate, like it required no effort to connect with the emotions of the characters. My only complaint is that the actor for the main character overacted sometimes. Only sometimes though. Other times he was absolutely perfect. And it's possible that it's just a cultural difference, because I can count the number of live action Japanese films that I've watched on one hand, so I don't have a lot to compare it to. Now before I wrap up the video, I want to point out a few things. Godzilla Minus One was a remake of a classic film that featured zero diversity, zero modern political opinions shoehorned in. They told a touching story about humanity that anyone could enjoy, regardless of whether or not Godzilla was a part of it, while simultaneously catering to the Godzilla fanbase. I think Japan did something special here. Toho Studios bucked the narrative that's so prominent among Western studios that the path forward includes a fixation on diversity, representation, and inclusion. Look at The Marvels, the film of 2023 that is the epitome of that ideology. It's got 3 female leads, a white woman, a black woman, and a Pakistani woman, I think, a popular black male character, a female villain, a bunch of cats, a musical number, and to top it off, they threw in some multiverse fan service. They threw everything but the kitchen sink into this film in order to attract a younger audience, a larger female audience, and to a degree, a greater international audience. They did everything except make a film that people wanted to see. Not only did they bomb at the box office, but they failed with their intended audience, with the estimated 66% majority of the audience for that film being male. And again, this isn't the Godzilla that is widely known at the moment. Legendary has been making their MonsterVerse films since 2014, and they have a TV series running right now. Despite that, Godzilla Minus One showed up and obliterated the narrative put forward by the toxic culture of Hollywood. But let me know what you guys think about Godzilla Minus One in the comment section below. As always, I would appreciate it if you would hit that like and subscribe button, as well as the notification bell so that you never miss out on a new video. Thanks for watching.